I'm Romy Sebald. I'm the collections manager for the Art Museum at SUNY Potsdam. And I'm going to take us on a little tour today of the permanent collection as you would see it if you were touring the campus. Right now we're in the Art Museum office, and I thought we'd look at this Wolf Kahn piece. This is an oil-on canvas, Falls Blazing Orange, painted in 1973. Wolf Kahn traveled from Germany when he was 13 years old to settle in New England. He's world famous for his treatment of light in his landscapes, and he's painted landscapes all over the world. He's known for his New England landscapes, especially Vermont, where he's living. And Roland Gibson actually purchased this piece in 1973. And now it has become a very important piece. If people come to look at this work, Wolf Kahn is still living in Vermont and still painting. I believe he's now in his 90s. He studied under Hans Hofmann, which will sound familiar to some people, and you may see some of that influence in his work. You recognize the work as a landscape, and he was really hitting his stride during a time of abstract expressionism, but he didn't go that extra mile and completely obliterate everything that would be familiar to you in the landscape. You recognize it as a landscape, but he's taken some of those qualities of abstract expressionism and made them his own in his work. This is The Valley in Winter with View of the Gap. It's an oil on canvas by Annie Lenny. And Annie Lenny was an artist who was born in Potsdam in 1910. She went to college in New Jersey and studied art, and was an artist all of her life, raised 3 children in New Jersey, and later in life she and her husband moved back to Potsdam, and upon her death she gave the college several of her paintings. I believe we have 39 of them. I love the detail. I love the color and the color palette, and that she felt it necessary to detail all these little houses it's very patterned, and a lot of her work is like that. So this is Robert Mallory, Casanova, 1969. It's plywood, cardboard, steel. I believe there's a wood beam behind it that helps support its weight on the wall, and polyester resin. The SGA, the Student Government Association, purchased this for the permanent collection in 1969. So I've heard stories about this piece when it was being made. I don't know if the artist made other works similar, but the polyester resin, it wasn't understood that there was a detriment to his health in using that. The fumes from the polyester resin apparently sent him to the hospital. This is a really interesting piece. People will be familiar with this. It's been hanging in the foyer in Brainerd Hall for many years. And I love that it's found object, or it evokes that you think it's found object. He may have, I'm sure he had great intent in what he was doing, but I love the idea that it's something that you would consider, you maybe wouldn't even consider walking by. And now it's been made into a really interesting shape, and it has permanence where it is something that is innately impermanent. It's a very interesting piece to clean, I'll tell you, because we want to be very careful about all the little protrusions of cardboard when we clean this, and it's a delicate process, but we do it every year. We have usually an intern is cleaning it. This is Robert Nelson's Heavily Armed Dinosaur General. He produced this in 1969, and the Student Government Association provided funds for us to purchase this for the permanent collection. These are lithographs, so they're produced on a litho stone. The image is drawn on the stone with a litho pencil, which is greasy and resists water, and then the stone is etched, and after the plate is produced, it's printed through a printing press. The stone itself is run through the press. This one in particular is mixed media. Robert Nelson did a lot of mixed media work. he has like a viewer interaction. If the glass weren't actually, or the glazing wasn't actually on over the top of the work, we'd be able to flip through these cards and see what was on every side. But obviously, when it's out in the public, we can't. He's riveted a gun that he's also created himself as a lithograph into the piece and sliced part of the original background work for the gun to fit into a holster of sorts. And I just love all the different ways he's included these different elements. So now we're in Flag Hall. This is Leonard Baskin's Man of Peace. It's a relief print on paper. Leonard Baskin was an artist who was studying post-World War II, and when other artists were experimenting with materials and methods, Leonard Baskin decided he was going to focus on a more formal form of making art and became a master printmaker. And we have several of his works. This is the largest that we have. And people will be familiar with this because it's been on display several places on campus since it's been here. It was purchased in 1958 with Potsdam College Development Funds. It's currently looking down a Flag Hall at several other works. I love how much it's like a drawing. I'm particularly fond of drawing and the marks made in a drawing and prints. Yeah, so this is a relief print, so this is another printmaking process where some material, often wood, sometimes linoleum, people may be familiar with the linoleum cuts. The material is incised and the plate of linoleum or wood, block of wood, would be inked, and only those raised surfaces that remain produce an image on the paper. So wherever you see white is where the block was incised and material taken away from the block. I'm standing in front of Shiryo Morita's So Deep and Abundant. It's a very large work on paper. It's Sumi ink on Chinese paper. This is one of two very large works that are on the 6th floor of Raymond Hall, outside the advancement and alumni offices. And these two works were donated to the permanent collection by Noriko Yamamoto Prince and her husband, Dr. Fred Prince. They both have been conserved so that we could include them in a traveling exhibition of the Japanese collection here. And now they're sitting in a very safe place, but still publicly visible to anyone who comes up to the 6th floor. There is a lot of energy in both of these works. This one particularly behind me, you can sense, because of the marks on the paper, the energy that went into producing it. They're very simple and they're very lovely. I just find them very peaceful. We're on the 7th floor of Raymond Hall, just outside the president of the college's office and the provost's office. And there's a gallery space that was created up here after renovations a few years ago. And currently we have on display a collection of woodblock prints by Fritz Eichenberg. These are mostly illustrations for books that he illustrated, and were made possible as part of our permanent collection by an exhibition that was here called Witness to Our Century, and it was a solo exhibition of Eichenberg prints. The Eichenberg Trust offered institutions that hosted the exhibit a collection of his works. So up here we currently have 10 works displayed. These are all woodcuts, I believe, up here. We do have some lithographs as well in the collection, currently in storage, but they also have been displayed. This work was produced in the mid-20th century. Eichenberg emigrated to the United States from Germany in 1933, and a lot of his work has religious reference, and he worked for the Catholic Worker, which was a publication for many years. This is Books by William King. We're in the middle of the academic quad facing Lougheed Learning Commons. He produced this in 1973 as part of a artist in residency program that was shared with 3 campuses. Fredonia, New Paltz, and SUNY Potsdam each hosted him for 6 weeks, and in that 6-week time he mingled with students and faculty and produced a sculpture that he left with each venue. And so this is made out of sheet aluminum, and he produced it right here on the campus with help from other art faculty, including Jim Sutter, who was teaching here at that time. If you notice, it has kind of a paper doll type of structure where the perpendicular sheet that runs through the main body is helping stabilize it in the wind. And we do get a lot of wind on this flat campus, so he understood that. I've read actually in the archive that he took that into account when building it. Everyone that's been to the campus has probably seen this piece, and students who have been here for 4 years have lived with this piece. Faculty that's been here for decades will remember this piece. It is not a difficult piece to maintain. We clean it every summer, and the aluminum has made it last in this environment, this difficult environment for outdoor sculpture. Behind me, we see Dolce, which is Nobu Fukui's large painting. It's the largest painting in our permanent collection. It's 8 feet tall by 24 feet long. And Nobu Fukui was a friend of Roland Gibson's. He was a very young teenager when a lot of the other Japanese artists whose work is represented in the collection were hitting their stride in Japan in their post-World War II experimental work. And he was fascinated by these artists and would follow them around and absorb what they were doing. And he ultimately was responsible for introducing Roland Gibson to a lot of these artists. So we have Nobu to thank for part of our collection. And we have representations of Nobu's work from every decade of his career up until the last decade here in our permanent collection. He recently had an exhibition here and wanted to come visit this painting. And we had a really wonderful time with him. But we're very lucky to have this very large painting, which took me an entire summer to clean once with Q-tips. But it's in a very wonderful, safe place here in the Crum Library, part of the Lougheed Learning Commons. This one's been in the collection since the time it was produced, and I believe it's named for Roland's dog, Dolce. I think as time goes by, the history of how this collection came together is easily lost in the times, and there aren't as many of us around that remember Roland Gibson walking around campus carrying paintings that were part of his collection that then became part of our collection and the campus collection, and he fostered the collection that was already growing on campus in his time here. So we see influences and relationships between works of art and artists throughout the collection and the time that's transpired. This is Lars Fisk's Winnebago Ball. We are in front of the Performing Arts Center on campus just off Barrington Drive. And you can walk up to this sculpture and see what Lars has created for us as part of the first Lougheed Festival. The Lougheed Festival is a spring arts festival that Don and Kathy Lougheed, Kathy is an alum of the college. They provide funds for us every year to have this wonderful spring arts festival. And as part of the first arts festival here, the first Loco Festival, Lars was asked to come up and be an artist in residence and produce this piece with students, and it's in honor of Don and Kathy Lougheed. They had a camper sales business, so Lars produced this in honor of them. Lars has been known for taking ordinary objects or vehicles in particular and making them somewhat recognizable in a spherical form of various sizes. So he's done this with other vehicles as well, buses and all kinds of Volkswagen bugs and all kinds of things. So it was really fun to have a Winnebago turned into a sphere. So inside you'll see a driver's seat and the dashboard and a steering wheel, but you also see a mini sink and counter on one side, coffee cup holder. On the other side you'll see a stove top with a burner in it. So you're getting the idea. I think there's a little television in it. So now we're outside of Dunn Hall in front of Alfred Wunderlich's Friday the 13th, which he produced in 1968. It's a welded steel and painted piece that Roland Gibson, I believe, commissioned. I have found records that Roland was communicating with Alfred about the piece and waiting for the piece. And Alfred was teaching in New England at Dartmouth at the time. And I have found a wooden maquette of this piece in an exhibition catalog from that time. So I have a feeling Roland probably saw that piece and wanted one like it. So this one's in welded steel. Welded steel is difficult. The paint, there was a specific paint that was used, and when we did have it restored, that was tricky, finding the right paint, because the paint it was originally painted in 1968 is no longer produced. So we had to come to something that was quite close, which was like a Cadillac white, and we did find one. So it's a little complicated, yes, to take care of something like this. I like it that it's just a big statement. It's a very pleasant form, and to see it driving onto campus makes you feel that this is an arts campus. I really think that solidifies that concept when you drive onto campus and see this piece.